It's a little cold in San Diego, sunny South Cal, and there are clouds massing, but it's just clear too. So, welcome to our online paired Tellabration. And a lot of people here know what Tellabration is, but for those who are newbies to Tellabration, we'll tell you what it is. Tellabration is a worldwide, almost synchronous event of storytelling that happens within a very short period of time. And its beginnings started in 1980 something. And there was a fellow, he was known as Pawpaw. His name was J.G. Pinkerton. And he was a Connecticut storyteller and story lover. And he hatched this idea. And it came from a small beginning and grew and grew and grew. And now, indeed, Tellabration is celebrated by storytellers and story listeners, all story lovers around the world. And I'm admitting people at the same time. So, Liz, I'm going to let you do that. Today, we have this pairing, which has been thought about from Storytellers Association of California, otherwise known as SAC. So that Southern California and Northern California and Middle California folks can get to know each other through that which they love, which is storytelling. So we've come together for the first time. We're thrilled to be paired with Contra Costa storytellers, just thrilled. And this, I understand, is their second Tellabration. And this is Storytellers of San Diego, my group, of which I'm a member. This is its 37th annual Tellabration. So some of the Tellabrations are produced a lot in certain locales, more than others. And Liz, I'm introducing my co-MC, our Liz Nichols from Contra Costa Tail Spinners. Liz, welcome, welcome.
Hi, everybody. So glad to see you all. Let's see. First, I want to send greetings from Dana Sherry, who is, as our group members know, the co-host now of our monthly story swap. She was going to be today's MC, but she's not able to be here. So I'm stepping in to be the MC. But she wishes everyone the warmest greetings for a wonderful celebration and wonderful holiday season. And I just want to briefly, our group, this is only our second Tellabration because others in the East Bay, where we are coming from, the San Francisco East Bay, have done Tellabrations for decades, including Marian Ferranti, who many of you know. And I just also want to send greetings from Marian. She's too busy. She has so many things to do today, but she put on in-person Tellabrations for decades and was the founder and leader of the Delta Word Weavers. And but our group started over 25 years ago with three wonderful people who wanted to have storytelling in between Alameda County, Oakland, and where Delta World Weavers is, which is way out at the other end of the county. And so created this group, and it's been meeting ever since. And Sally Holtzman, who's the only of the three, the one who's still with us. She is with us here today. So hi, Sally. We're so glad that you are here. Okay. A little housekeeping before we go to our first storytelling team, first storytelling team, which is fantastic, is that please stay muted unless you are the speaker designate. And you can, show your appreciation this way and put comments in the chat for the tellers. Try to do that, please, in between stories. Okay. I'll turn it back to you, Mindy.
Thank you, Liz. And here's just a bit about Storytellers of San Diego. We've been a storytelling association of storytellers and story listeners, all story lovers, since the late 1970s. And we've been a nonprofit here in California for at least 10 years. And we get about the county and sometimes online with other groups all over. And our mission is simply to spread the joy and value of storytelling. And we do that in different institutions and libraries and schools. And here we are. So our first team of tellers is from Storytellers of San Diego, and they are the Patchwork Players Story Theater. And individually, they're Patty Christensen and James Nelson Lucas. So together, they've been storytellers at Rady Children's Hospital in the Healing Arts Department for 20 years. And they really embody storytelling. Here they are.
Well, thank you so much. We're so glad to be here. James, we're on. Are you?
Look, this Saint Bernard and this cougar are best friends. Isn't that great? I love these animals. They're so cute.
Can you please put that down? Because it's time in our story. We want to tell a story.
Okay, all right.
A story. We want to peel back the layer to find out something that people might not know about, something that happened, a craze. Well, back in the early 1800s.
Yes, the 19th century. Wow, can you imagine London in around 1817, the foggy streets and the clip-clop of the horse carriages on the cobblestone roads and the cries of the street vendors. Oh, it was a very exciting time.
Well, it was an exciting time also for science because there was a lot of scientific experimentation going on. And at this point in London, there was particularly, a Scottish scientist.
Yes, by the name of Dr. David Brewster. And he was there. He was working at a time when, like Patty was saying, lots of scientific innovation, and especially there was a thing called the philosophical toys, which would be things like the zoetrope and the magic lantern. So many new and exciting ways for normal people to see the world in new and impossible ways.
Well, and Sir David, he had something that he was particularly interested in. He liked to know about optics and light.
Optics and light. Oh,
and at one point, he came up with something. He was thrilled. He was delighted.
Yes.
He invented the kaleidoscope.
Now, he invented this to be a new scientific toy, not just for children, but a toy that could be used by artists or architects or other people to help spark creativity with all the beautiful shapes and colors.
So, but he thought it might be a serious thing that he developed. So serious, but the people in London, did they take it seriously?
No, they didn't understand the science at all, but they still went mad for it. Oh, they loved the kaleidoscope.
Because you see, the kaleidoscope craze had begun.
Oh, it was terrible. People were walking around the streets with the kaleidoscope in their eyes while they were bumping into each other. They were paying attention to where they were going, light posts and falling into ditches. It was terrible.
They said at one point, nearly every man, woman, and child was walking along with this amazing kaleidoscope. You see, you looked inside and you saw magic and beautiful things. They said even babies, if you handed them a kaleidoscope, it kept them busy for hours.
That's right. Just keep quiet. They keep them quiet.
Now, you're thinking, well, that's kind of interesting. How did it get to be that all of those people were enchanted with what we think of as a toy?
Well, originally he patented this item in 1817, and he went immediately into production. He had a company making these beautiful
Well, he had a hard time really finding, you see, he wasn't a maker. He
No,
was an idea
that's
guy.
right. He's a scientist.
So he kept talking to different people, trying to find who could make the most for him. But there was a little bit of a problem.
He
You
messed
see,
up, yeah.
when he did the patent, he
Mhm.
got the science part right.
He got the angles and the mirror and that part of the construction, but he didn't patent the tube at all.
And so, as it turned out, basically anybody and their brother could make their own kaleidoscope.
Which
And-
is okay. He couldn't produce enough to fill the need anyway.
But pretty soon they did.
Mhm.
There were so many of them going on. But you see, there started being kind of concern. People would walk along the street and they would actually bump into each other. There was a chance that they would be run over by horses because they were mesmerized by their devices.
And even if they didn't have their own kaleidoscope, why the poor folks in the street, they figured out a way to make their own kaleidoscopes, and they would charge you a penny for a peek. And this is how they were making their bread money, penny for a peek.
Well, they said it really started to be a problem because, well, a family would sit down for dinner and everybody would get out their device.
Father would ignore his roast beef. Mother would let the pudding go cold. The children were just staring off into the nobody was talking to each other. They're just sitting at the table.
Oh my goodness. Well, there was a painting that was made at that point that showed a whole crew, everybody on their devices. Underneath it said, "Kaleidoscope mania hits here."
Oh, we're in despair. Oh, the horrors.
They said in some cases, a gentleman couldn't even tell that somebody was trying to court his lady because he was so involved in his device.
So remember that when you're checking your notifications.
Well, now you might say, is this the first time that anything like this ever happened? This is amazing. Something portable, something what was pulling people away.
A technological device you can carry with you and be distracted with at any time.
Actually, this wasn't the first time this happened. 100 years before that, in the early 1700s, there was something known as reading fever.
Oh, it was terrible. The young people had become literate, and they spent all their time with their noses in books.
And they said with the invention of the dime store novel, they could read all kinds of lurid things. People were afraid that they would have lost their ability to have conversation.
They thought people would become socially inept.
Well, a ways further into the 18th century,
Our very own David Brewster, you might have heard the stereograph with the little pic. He actually improved that. The old version was very clunky and hard to manufacture, but he figured out how to make it cheap and portable. So people were buying those everywhere and had the same kind of problems. You're staring,
looking at the stereo.
your eyes are going to go bad and you won't find anybody to talk to.
Well, now it went forward, and you might say, we had all of this going on. Now, pretty soon, we started getting some serious criticism.
Oh, yes. Well, for example, there was a playwright who found the kaleidoscope so fascinating and amazing that he broke it open to find out what was inside, and he realized it was just bits of broken glass. He thought it was wonderful, but it was turned out to be a lie.
Well, pretty soon people were saying not only would people lose their capability to have conversation, to be with other human beings, to go around, well, and they thought it might rot your brain, frankly.
Yes.
It was a very big concern.
And they thought, the critics were saying, hey, God's beauty is all around us. Why would you spend your time looking at this artificial contraption of fractals and images that weren't God created at all?
So you might say, now this was going on. How big of a hit was this really?
Oh my gosh. Well, Sir David Brewster himself estimated that after the first 3 months of production, he had sold, well, there had been sold over 200,000 kaleidoscopes in London in 1817. Can you imagine that?
Now, when he first was thinking he had sold, no, he was not a good businessman. He
No.
didn't create anything that really, he didn't actually hardly make any money.
No, he didn't make it.
They figured it in that amount of time, probably 1,000
pounds, and that's money pounds.
Not 1,000 pounds, 1,000
Oh,
pounds.
1,000
was so much money. And Sir David,
not so much in his pocket, but don't worry about it. He was fine. He had a wonderful art career. He went on and helped fix the stereoscope. He invented the Fresnel lens, which you showbiz folks type and lighthouse fans know about the lens. He invented that. He did quite well for himself as a prestigious scientist for the rest of his life. He was highly regarded and famous.
So, as it went forward, you might have thought, well, this must have went on forever.
No.
No, as these crazes go, it went on for a while.
And then the kaleidoscope was domesticated. It was taken off the streets and it moved into the home as a parlor.
And they invented little things with stands, and you could invite people over, and you maybe spend a little bit of time. It was like a conversation piece.
Yeah.
And as things went forward, by the time we reached World War II, it turned into something. You might have had something more like this when you were a kid. It was a children's toy, along with erector sets and Cupid dolls. Well, you might say, how does this fit? How does it speak for us now? Now we know we have our fabulous cell phones with it. People say many of the same things. We just want to give you a small reminder. The truth is, as time comes and fads come and go, there might be, for example, do you remember fidget spinners?
Oh, yeah, and the little popper thingies?
Yeah, or Pokemon Go. All things have their season. They come, they go. But in the end, one of the things that is so important, make sure you sometimes look up from your device.
Go outside and play.
Maybe let your children have some opportunity to hear some of your own personal stories. But we hope one of the stories you take with you today was the true story about the kaleidoscope. Thank you.
That was just about right, huh?
Unmute. Okay, thank you. That was fantastic. I'm so impressed with your ability to keep trading the story back and forth. And also, you brought me back to, I loved kaleidoscopes as a child. And also you made me, it's so thought-provoking that right this moment, we're using devices instead of to separate ourselves, to bring ourselves together. So that's a beautiful thing. Thank you for bringing that to us. Woo! What a great start. All right. One of the things about, I'm going to bring up our next storyteller, and that is Rose Owens. And let me add your spotlight, Rose. Okay. Rose is from Contra Costa Tail Spinners. She lives in Livermore, California. And she has been, I asked, do you remember when you started coming to Tail Spinners? And it's feels a little like ancient history. It's been such a long time, but maybe at least 15 years. And during the pandemic, I feel like, Rose, you're one of the people who we lost a little bit of our connection, and we're so glad that you are back with us. So Rose has a literary tale for us that has a very interesting story behind its own story. So Rose, please share your story.
Christmas Guest. The Christmas Guest was originally written by Ruben Salins in France.
And then Tolstoy found it, and Tolstoy thought it was in the public domain, and he did an adaptation of it. It was subsequently translated to English and translated back to French, at which point Salenza realized that his copyright had been violated. And he talked to Tolstoy, and Tolstoy apologized profusely. However, it had been let loose into the world. It was translated back into English. In the 1950s, it was written in a Hallmark greeting card. Helen Steiner Rice made it into a poem. And after that, Papa Jones performed it, and Johnny Cash, and Reba McEntire, and Andy Griffin. Now, sometimes the characters changed, and sometimes the location changed, but the message of the story always remained. And I base my telling upon the Tolstoy version. The Christmas Guest. Martin Avidovich, the village cobbler in a little Russian village, stood at his window looking out. He watched the snow falling as the snow fluttered to the ground, and the children laughing and shouting out, and people talking, and it was Christmas. His face was a little bit sad, and his eyes behind those big round spectacles and their laugh wrinkles, they looked sad. His wife had passed away long ago, and his children were gone, but he remembered Christmas and the joy of Christmas, and this was Christmas Eve. And he stood outside at his window, and as the shadows deepened and the lights flickered out, he closed his shutters and he sat down and he picked up his Bible. Now, Martin didn't always read, but tonight he did, and he held his book and he followed the lines with his fingers as he read, and he read of Mary and Joseph and their voyage, their travel from Nazareth to Bethlehem. And when they got there, it was late and there was no room at the end. And, oh, dear, he said, how could this happen? Why, the baby was born in a stable. If they had come to my village, I would have invited them in. I would have given Mary my bed. I would have used my quilt to keep the baby Jesus warm. And he continued to read. And he read of the wise men who saw the star in the sky and followed the star. And they came and they brought gifts of gold and frankincense and myrrh. I don't have a gift for baby Jesus. And he looked up on the shelf and he reached up and he brought down a small box and he dusted off the top and he lifted up the lid. Inside was a pair of tiny baby leather shoes, the finest shoes he had ever made. I could give this gift to the Christ child, he said. And he sat down and his eyes were tired and he rested his eyes and he fell asleep. And in his dreaming there came a voice. And as it is when you have a dream, you know instantly who it was. And he recognized the voice of Jesus. Martin Avidovich, tomorrow is Christmas. Tomorrow I will come to your house. Look carefully, or you will not recognize me. And the next thing Martin knew, the bells were ringing, and it was Christmas Day, and he stood up and he stretched his stiff back, and he put some milk on the stove to heat to make the hot chocolate, and he went to the window and he opened the shutters and he looked out, and the streets were empty. There was no one there except a street sweeper. And he was dirty and ragged and red hands and blowed on his red hands. And Martin stepped to the door and he said, come in, come have a hot drink with me. And the street sweeper was glad to come in. He said, oh, thank you. And as he cradled the mug in his hand with the hot drink, he said, God bless you, Martin Avidovich. Martin kept looking out the window, and he said, the street sweeper said, are you expecting company? And so Martin told him the story. And the street sweeper said, I hope your dreams come true. And as the street sweeper opened the door to leave, a cold breeze came whistling into the house, and Martin reached over and he took his coat off the wall, his brand new coat, and he said, here, This will keep you warm. And there are gloves in the pocket. And as the door shut, Martin thought, my old coat will do for one more year. So Martin tidied up his house, and he made some cabbage soup for his dinner. And he wondered, how will Jesus come? Will he be a baby? Will he be a grown man, a carpenter? Or will he come as the Son of God in glory? And Martin wondered. And he went to the door and he looked out, and then he saw her, an old woman. She was wearing a ragged black shawl. She held a bundle of sticks in her hands, and every so often one would fall over, and she would hunch over and pick it up and put it back in. And Martin went out and he said, here, let me help you. And he took that bundle of sticks and he tied it up with a rope, and he said, come in and get warm. Come rest by my fire. And he gave her soup to eat, and they visited, and she got warm. And as she left, she said, oh, Martin, bless you. God bless you, Martin Avidovich. And then she was gone. And Martin watched by the window, and the shadows grew longer, and the people got fewer and fewer, and still he had not come. Was it only a dream? And then he saw her. This young girl was hugging the edge of a building, walking close to it and sheltering for the rain. And in her arms she held something, and as Martin looked closer, he could see that it was a baby. And its pinched face was as sad as its mother's. And Martin went to the door and he said, come in, come in. And he sat her down by the fire and gave her soup. And he took the child from her arms and he said, let me give her some more milk. I have had children of my own. I know how to do this. And he spooned milk into the child's mouth. And then he looked down. She has no shoes. I know. I know my husband has died, and I am left alone, and I am going to the next town to see if I can get a job, and then I can buy her shoes. He was saving those for the Christ child, but Martin reached up onto the shelf, brought down the box, handed the baby to the mother, and he said, here, try these on. See if they fit. And they fit perfectly. And the baby gurgled and laughed, and the mother smiled. And as they left, she said, God bless you, Martin Avidovich. And Martin stood by the window, and the shadows deepened, and the wintry night descended. And he had not come. Was it only a dream? He had not come. And then suddenly it was as if there was someone in the room. Who are you? And he heard the voice, and it was the voice of Jesus from his dream. And he said, Martin, 3 times my shadow crossed your door. I was the sweet sleeper who wears your coat. I was the old woman with the bundle of sticks. I was the young mother with the baby that wears your shoes. I was hungry and you fed me. I was naked and you clothed me. I was a stranger and you took me in. Martin, I say to you that if ye have done it unto the least of these, ye have done it unto me. And then the room was silent and quiet, and Martin could hear the ticking of the clock. And he felt like jumping for joy and shouting and dancing. He came. He really came. For of all the gifts that he could give, love was the best gift he could give. He really came. And that is the story of the Christmas guest.
Rose, thank you for that wonderful story. And I believe that Tolstoy himself would have appreciated your expressive rendition. Thank you.
Thank you.
It's my pleasure to introduce Linda Brown, another teller from Storytellers of San Diego. And she is a co-founder of Black Storytellers of San Diego, as well as the president. And I'm going to brag on you, Linda. You know, I like to do this. She is a recipient of an award from Black Storytellers Association nationally. And this is a prestigious award, and it is called the Brother Blue and Ruth Edmonds Hill Award for Storytelling. So without further ado, we'll hear from Linda Brown.
Okay. The theme that I wrote this story on is what lies beneath. And this theme was given to me. I was supposed to have told it on the 15th. But when this came up, I said, I know I've written this story. It was entrusted to me by Fred and Mindy. And when they gave it to me, it was like, what the heck do you mean, what lies beneath? So, what lies beneath what? So, of course, I Googled it. I talked to my adult children, and I decided to use those snippets of wisdom that my parents would say when I was younger. Like when I was outside one day, I must have been about 4 or 5, and I was playing by myself, and I picked up a rock and I threw it up, and it came right down, hit me in the top of my head. And of course, I started crying, and I ran inside to my dad, looking for him to give me hugs and say, "Oh, I am so sorry." But instead, you know what he did? He kind of chuckled and he said, "Well, what goes up must come down." I'm like, what do you mean by that? Did that make me feel better? No, of course not. But I did realize that when I throw something up, I better move quick so it didn't come back down and hit me in the head. Okay. And then there was another time I had gone to this restaurant. Oh, that food was so, so good. And as I'm walking out, I look at the window where they have that health department rating. You know, the one, the blue one, it has an A, B, C, and preferably not a D. This one had a C. And I thought, that wasn't there when I walked in the door. They must have put that in there after I walked in, or I never would have gone in there to eat, although the food was really good. And, and I'm still, and so as I walk out the door thinking, oh my God, what have I done? I could hear my mother saying, well, what don't kill you will make you fat. And so I get in my car and I'm driving away. I can only laugh because I must be eating a whole bunch of stuff that ain't gonna kill me. And then I remember going next door to my friend's house. And as I walk, it's a hangout. Everybody kind of winds up. This is the neighborhood hangout at my friend's house. And as I walk in the door, I see my bestie hugging my boyfriend. And I think, oh my God. I couldn't even say anything. I just turned and walked out. Thank God she was just next door. And I go home and I am just boo-hooing to my mom. Mom, she took my boyfriend. And about that time, my father walked by and he said she couldn't take him if he didn't want to go. And I'm like, but he said he loved me. My mother said, this too shall pass. You find another boy, the boyfriend on the next corner, and more than likely he'll be better than the one that she took. How, you know, they never said anything that made me feel better, but it did make me think 2 or 3 times. And then there was another thing that happened. My girlfriends and I got tired of waiting on the boys to ask us out. And so we planned a girls' night out. And of course, some of these girls weren't always my best buddies. And As I walked toward the door to go meet them, my mother and my sister said in unison, "I wouldn't do that if I was you." And I said, "You just don't want me to have any fun." And out the door I went. Well, when the night ended and I walked back in the house looking dejected and like nobody loved me, my mother and my sister both looked at me and said in unison, and said, "We told you not to go." And I thought, but how did you know this? They gave me that old, a hard head makes for a soft behind. I don't know how many times you guys have heard, but I've heard it a lot because it means you should have listened when we told you. We told you don't go, and you went anyway. What can I say? So then I am at I'm someplace else doing something that my parents were just like, "Oh my God." I'm sitting there with my friends and we're having a really good time. And these are really good friends this time. And everybody's talking and I am just very quiet. And those of you who know me know I'm not real quiet. But I am very quiet sitting there. My friend Faye said, "Linda, why are you so quiet?" And I said, "Because I have no idea what you guys are discussing. And so, as my father would say, it's better to remain quiet and have people think you're a fool rather than to open your mouth and let them know you're a fool." So that was why I just stayed quiet. My oldest sister was working on her doctorate, and she was writing her doctoral thesis. And one day she just got really tired. She picked up all the papers and just threw them across the room and said, "Why is this taking so long?" Well, I saw my time to get back at her and I said, "Well, Rome wasn't built in a day." And I ducked out that back door before she could throw anything at me because, of course, I'm the younger sister and I'm not supposed to have that kind of information. And then my brother, who was a workaholic. I mean, he worked constantly. And then he got upset with the family because he not only missed Thanksgiving dinner, he missed Christmas dinner, and he also missed the traditional New Year's gathering that we had. And the thing is, why would he get mad? We wrote it into the family chat. My mother called him and told him about it. I called him, my other two sisters called him, but he was just too busy. And that's when that African saying came in that work is good as long as you don't forget to live. And he had forgotten to live. So, have, here's another one. Have you ever wondered why sometimes you will ask someone something or say something to them and they look at you like you just spit in their face and you're wondering what happened there? That's when my mother would very kindly smile and say, "Well, it ain't what you said, it's how you said it." And, so those are the things that I grew up with. As I sat in my mother's old rocking chair, thinking about my mother on one of those days when you are just missing mom, and those days do come around. I remember an African saying, "No matter how bad your journey is in life that day, it will always get better tomorrow."
Thank you, Linda. Oh, that was wonderful. I just could sit and listen to you all day. Um, I just the combination of humor and and whatever that word is, kind of got a little choked up there. And the importance of the wisdom that we get and all the other things we get from the people who've raised us and who raised them. So thank you.
And who we thought were absolutely out of it.
Well, hopefully we're old enough to have learned better.
Yes.
Great. Well, thank you, Linda. Okay, well, the next storyteller is me. Um, and by way of introduction, I will say that I am I live in Oakland, California, and I've been coming to Contra Costa Tailspinners Story Swap monthly pretty much since I moved here from San Francisco, which was in 2005. So that's 20 years ago. And I discovered that even though I live on one side of these hills, the East Bay Hills, and Tailspinners was on the other, it was both the quickest and also the warmest and most welcoming place that I could come to share stories and listen to stories. So, yay, Tailspinners. I am one of those tellers who loves to tell the old traditional stories. I like to say that I got lost in the 398 section, the folklore and mythology section of the public library down the street when I was about 10 years old, and I haven't found my way out yet. So I do have a Greek myth to share with you. But before I do, I just want to make a little plug, and I'm going to put it in the chat too. So, TELLABRATION is a nationwide and even global event that wasn't created by, but it is now supported by and promulgated by the National Storytelling Network, which is an amazing organization. I have been a member of it for many decades, and it's been very important to me. And I urge you all, if you are storytellers, to become members. And I also encourage you today to use the link in the chat to find out more about it. And if you feel so moved, to make a donation, whether it's $10 or it's $100, whether you join or just give something, in gratitude for this amazing tradition of TELLABRATION. So that's link is in the chat. All right. Well, this time of year is a time of year that there's some things about it I don't like so much. I mean, I don't like that it gets dark so early now. I don't like that it's rainy. It's the rainy season here in California. It's cold and it's damp. But one thing that I do love and I look forward to every year is that I look forward to looking up in the night sky on a clear night and seeing an old friend. And that friend is the constellation Orion. Anybody else here know how to recognize Orion? I mean, I love him partly because other than the Big Dipper, which like barely counts, it's too easy, but he's the one constellation that I can recognize. And being a lover of mythology, I wanted as an adult to really look into how did he get there? Now, since this is a myth, there's not just one version, but I want to tell you the one I like best. See, all the versions, they do begin with the goddess Artemis, the goddess of the moon, the virgin goddess who rejects civilized society and marriage, and who spends all her time with the wild animals and the things of nature in the woods with her female maiden companions. And it was said that when Artemis took one of her silver arrows out of her quiver and put it in her bow, and when she drew back, She let that arrow fly. It always hit its mark. Now, Orion, well, his father was a god. His father was Poseidon, the god of the sea. But his mother, well, I can't even remember who she was. She wasn't someone, she was a mortal of some kind. And so he was just a demigod. But compared to an ordinary human being, he was a giant of a man. He was stronger and more powerful and more skilled. And the skill that he developed with a passion was hunting. Orion, the mighty hunter. And so it's not surprising that he wanted to become a devotee of Artemis. And so he would go into the woods and try to crash her all-female gatherings. And again, some versions of this myth say that she got very angry at that. But other versions say she noticed him and she liked what she saw. In fact, I mean, he could have been the answer if there had been personal ads or Match.com in those days, to her ad, to her profile. I mean, she might have said looking for, outdoorsy type who loves long walks on the beach and in the forest and obsession with hunting, a big plus. And there he was. And so she just completely changed. He melted that cold heart and she decided, I'm going to marry him. And then when she went to tell her father Zeus and all the other Olympians up on Mount Olympus, wouldn't you know, those who had wanted her to get married, now they didn't. Isn't it like that with the people you brought home on a date to meet your family? Like they're never good enough, right? I mean, he's only a demigod. He's way beneath you, they said. And her brother Apollo was adamant against this marriage. So he tried to reason with Athena. He tried to argue with her. He tried to push her into it, but she was tough. No dice. So he decided he had to trick her into in order to stop this marriage. Now, Apollo in his form as the sun or Helios, he sees everything. And so what he had seen was that before the wedding, as a kind of prenuptial honeymoon type little travel outing, that Artemis and Orion had gone to the island of Crete. And in those days, Crete had no humans on it. It was just from one end to the other, what you'd say a virgin forest, just teeming with hunting game of all kinds, from the biggest to the smallest. And the couple were having a blast until Orion did something that he should have known that in Greek mythology you just cannot do if you are not one of the immortals. Hubris, the sin of hubris. He bragged, I am such a great hunter. If I wanted to, I could kill every living creature on this island. That's how good I am. But someone was listening who didn't like that at all. Gaia, the goddess, Mother Earth. And when she heard that threat against her creatures, she decided she would take her revenge on Orion. And she sent one of the smallest of those creatures, but one of the deadliest, a tiny scorpion. And it sneaked up behind him and it bit him on the foot. And now Orion felt the venom of that scorpion starting to rise through his bloodstream. And he looked around for help. He looked around for Artemis. She was a goddess. She had many powers. She could save him. But then he remembered, she's not here today. She's off on that other island across the sea. She's with her brother Apollo. They're having a a one last time brother, sister, sibling bonding picnic before she becomes a married woman, and I'd better go find her. Now, you might think that was impossible, but Orion wasn't so off base when he acted as if he could walk on water, because his father Poseidon had given him that power to walk on water as easily as land. So he set out from Crete to this other island, and Apollo took his chance. He said to his sister, he used the secret power that is more important than any of the other gods' secret powers, and it's one that a lot of us have had. It's the power that siblings have, teasing, right? Teasing. Oh, Artemis, everybody knows that you are the greatest hunter. I know you're great, but this boast that you have, that whenever you draw an arrow and you shoot it, it always hits its mark, I don't believe it. It's true. Well, prove it. All right, I will. Well, then here's, I dare you. You see, Crete is over there. And you see, if you look in the sea in between Crete and this island that we're on, do you see there's a tiny, tiny dark speck? It's something, it's coming towards us. If you can hit that, then I will believe you. Well, you can imagine how Artemis felt. You can imagine how the blood rushed to her cheeks when her brother acted as if, he knew better than her, and she was going to prove him wrong. And so she got out one of those arrows and she cocked it and she pulled that bow back and she aimed it high so that the ark would fly across the waters. And she released her arrow, and it flew and flew and flew, and it hit its mark, and she rejoiced. But that joy turned to grief when she and Apollo went down to the shoreline and waited for her prey to wash up in the waves onto the sand. And when she saw the body of her beloved, she was heartbroken. But even as a goddess, she could not bring him back to life. But she could do something almost as good. She gave him immortality. She scooped up that body and she lifted it up, 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 high into the sky. And she even took his faithful dog, Sirius, and put that in the sky at his feet, the dog constellation, the star Sirius. And then, for good measure, she went and found that scorpion, and she put it up in the night sky too. But she was very careful, so that even to this day, if you go out tonight and the sky is clear from even sunset, but by 10 o'clock at night, you should be able to see Orion in the sky. But if you stayed up late enough towards sunrise, when he sets, only then, when he is sunk beneath the horizon, will you see the constellation Scorpio. And that is how the goddess kept her beloved safe forever. Sorry, it's still me. I will replace Mindy. Here we go. Okay. All right. I get to introduce the next storyteller too. Next storyteller is from Contra Costa Tale Spinners, and it is, here you are, Lance. It is Lance McVeigh. Let me add you there. Hi, Lance.
Hey.
Well, Lance lives in Hayward, California. So he's actually in Alameda County with me also. It was probably about 15 years ago that he started trekking over to Contra Costa to join Tail Spinners at the Orinda Library. And we've had him as our featured teller at different genre swaps. And Lance, he writes, he publishes, and he performs his own unique style of story poems. And he's brought 2 of them to share with us tonight. Lance, take it away.
Thank you. Yeah, and one of them is new, so you guys get a new one. So yeah, I've got 2. First one's called Mouse in the House, and the second one is an ode to Mangus McGreen. So Mouse in the House is a new one. I haven't told this one in a forum before, so I'm looking forward to it. So my story is that not long ago, a man came to my house. He said if I gave him shelter, he would give to me a mouse. Well, so I did, and so he did. And so it was that there I sat with a cup of coffee, firm in hand, the morning paper, and a small gray rat. Well, rat or mouse, I could not say, but a rodent, all the same, was sitting on my countertop and seemingly quite tame. So a biscuit I did give to it, and it did what rodents do, and when it quickly finished it, it clearly wanted 2. First 2, then 4, then 6, then 10, then coffee, cheese, and bread. Its hunger was insatiable. It should have been quite dead. But then it fell upon its back, its belly quite distended, and I was sure this rodent's life, now bloated, here had ended. But slowly, oh so slowly, it rolled its fatted form over to my fruit bowl. But here I said, no more. No, I said with a finger wab, this gluttony must stop. So I dropped it in a shoebox and poked some holes on top. Then shoes and tie and shirt and brief, I mustered myself on to train and bust to get to work. But the whole day I was gone, I wondered of that little mouse and the man I had assisted, and wondered how it came to be to me the mouse he gifted. But work is work, and work comes first, and so my day was spent. I tidied up my office, and home from work I went. But at my door, to my surprise, an officer stood firm, and several more inside my home, and soon I quickly learned a call came from my home that day, a desperate plea for help that claimed I had denied them food and boxed them up myself. I chuckled to myself and said, this simply cannot be. The only thing I've locked up here is a mouse. Come here and see. I walked the officer inside, and there the box was tipped. No mouse or rat there was inside, and the officer then quipped, so let me get this straight, he said. You think this desperate plea was from a mouse or rat, you say? You need to come with me. For hours, I was told to make the same firm declaration, and so, for my own safety, I was held for observation. Now, I am not a man who lies. The truth is my North Star. But truth, it did not seem to me, would get me very far. So finally, after 3 long days of drugs and therapy, and acknowledging there was no mouse, they finally set me free. Arriving at my doorstep, I carefully unlocked the door and took a look inside in horror and in shock. For there inside the home I loved, in every nook and crook, were mice of every shape and size, and everywhere I looked, in baskets, bowls, and cupboards, and cushions, couch, and chairs, my closet closed, my underwear, my refrigerator bare, my plants were eaten down to nubs, my cat was missing too, my car was filled, my bed sheets, my fireplace in flue. I grabbed a broom and held it firm and swung with all my might. I fought with force and fury and battled them all night. At dawn, the house was quiet. The vermin had been beaten. I was pale, scratched, and torn. I hadn't slept or eaten. Bruised and battered, worn and torn, I waddled to the kitchen and found just one unbroken glass. I quickly poured a drink in. I gazed upon my worldly things piled in a heap. At some point, I can't tell you when, I drifted off to sleep. But then I woke quite suddenly to orange flames and smoke. I crawled upon the floorboards, I sputtered, coughed, and choked, and when I found the door, I saw the mouse go underneath. But not before, I'm sure, I saw a wire in his teeth. All night I watched the fire burn. The mouse was by my side. You know, when they asked what caused it, you know I surely lied. And so, now homeless, I then wandered, aimless, lost, and lonely. All I had left was this small mouse. And then I thought, if only I could find some soul to take it off my hands. So I focused on my plans, and I focused on my journey, and I planned out my journey and focused on my plans. And when I finally found its home, it took me quite some time. I came and checked myself in here. These padded walls are fine. 3 meals a day, a place to sleep, that's really all I need. And best of all, there are no mice, and that is fine indeed. So my advice when offered mice for rats or for trade or barter, remember me and then you'll see it's really a non-starter. For once a mouse is in your house, no matter how you treat it, all it knows is how it grows with every bit you feed it. All right, mouse in the house. Now on to Ode to Mangus McGreen, another sort of infestation. Okay, Ode to Mangus McGreen. Now Mangus McGreen, he was old and mean and lived in a shack on a hill. He was surly and sore and had fought in the war with gun notches counting his kills. Now alone he resigned to live on a dime as remote as he possibly could. He ran an old still, thus drinking his fill and not eating as well as he should. At night he'd rejoice in his bitter life choice, and he'd sit in his rocker and puff on an old wooden pipe with tobacco so ripe, life didn't seem so rough. He'd stare at the stars, healing the scars that he'd carried for most of his life. The loss of a son at the end of a gun and the death of his beautiful wife. But then one night when the sky was bright and the starlight was vivid and clean, something occurred so strange and absurd it changed old Mangus McGreen. He just had to smoke when the sky awoke with a boom and a shudder and flash that lit up the sky, and he rubbed his eyes and was covered in dust and ash. When the air had cleared, he dusted his beard and grabbed for his sawed-off gun, loaded 2 in the beast and pointed it east and stood, not looking to run. By an old dead tree where his family be in graves that he kept well attended was a smoldering pit, and by the size of it, something from above had descended. Well, he walked to the rim and looked within, and there in the rock and sand, glowing hideous green through smoke and steam, was a stone the size of his hand. Well, using his boot, he gave it a scoot and kicked it right out of its nest, where it plunked on the ground, still green and round, and from where he had already guessed. You're an alien scout, and I have no doubt you picked the wrong place to land, because I'm meaner than spit, and I'll admit I'm dumb as a stump and damned. Then gun barrels blazed, and looking amazed, he saw it had hardly been scratched. He was a bit surprised, so he narrowed his eyes, so it's going to be like that. So he kicked that rock right into his shot, his boot striking hard and quick. Where a forge in the night growed orange and bright, he pumped up the bellows and spit. This is the end, my alien friend, and that forge roared mighty and hot. With tongs and gloved hands, he continued his plan and grabbed for that stone and got that thing in the heat. And with a hammer, he beat that stone with a fury and force till it shattered and cracked. And with continued attacks, it turned to dust. And of course, he scattered that dust in the forge and thus was free from that alien stone. As the last gassy shreds of that thing were dead, he walked to his house alone. Now, while en route, he looked to his boot and noticed a smoldering hole. Where he kicked at the rock, it burned through to his sock, and his toe felt a tingle and cold. Well, you scored one there. I guess that's fair, he said as he readied for bed. As he turned out the light, the world seemed right, because that alien thing was dead. He woke with the sun, and when he was done with breakfast, bacon and beans, he looked to his toe. It was swollen as though it had been stung by a scorpion sting. A few hours on, the swelling was gone, but then it turned horrible green. And then later a pain shot to his brain, then something he'd never seen. That toe seemed alive. It would wriggle and writhe and sprouted a tentacled root. Damn that stone, he said with a groan. I shouldn't have used my boot. But I've lost an ear and 3 fingers a here, a kneecap, a rib, and my spleen. My spine's been fused, and I am unamused. I'm vengeful, vindictive, and mean. So be ready, son. I'm not using my gun. And he reached for his hatchet and gin. I've said my goodbyes, but I'm not ready to die. And he hacked off his toe with a grin. Well, it dropped on the floor, and then to his horror, it wriggled and started to crawl. And that little green root attached to his boot. Now I'm certain I've seen it all. Without further delay, he said, I'll say you're a worthy opponent, old rock. Then he burned that old boot with that toe in that root, and for safety, he threw in the sock. Now later, they say, he moved away to the city and found a new wife. And Mangus McGreen stopped being so mean and lived a quite regular life. He was gentle and kind, and others would find he was happy and generous too. They say he never swore, and he always wore steel-toed boots and shoes. So that's the whole story, be it ever so gory, but if truth to be told, every one of us owe a debt to McGreen, for when ornery and mean, he defeated that alien fungus.
Lance, I am dazzled. As everybody else is bedazzled. The arc of the mouse story was just so superb. And you have the heart and soul of a balladeer, and Mangus McGreen will never forget.
The old
Well,
dude.
I won't either. Well, I am the final storyteller. It's not the final solution, but I am the final storyteller for the day. And I'm from San Diego. I'm Mindy Donner, as you know, and I live in central San Diego between the ocean and the mountains. I've been Storytellers of San Diego. Oh, I don't know. I'm just going to guess 13, 14 years, something like that. And I've always been a fan even before that. And I do enjoy working and playing with that group. So here's my story, and I get up to tell it. Yeah. Herbie. It all starts with my fish belly pack. That is a belly pack in the shape of a trout. I wore it every day. It housed my cell phone, and I was so fond of that belly pack. Well, it fell off and I lost it at a storytelling event, but it came back. I do believe that was the very same day that my good friend Leanne, who's also a storyteller, put her cell phone in a brown grocery bag down in a parking lot at a library and never saw it again. We share that kind of karma. Now, I used to be all the time at another library with a project, and I would dash in and out several times a week. And in my dashing in and out, the quick release mechanism on the belt gave up the ghost. Oh, I was undeterred. After all, I am a puppeteer. That is to say, deft of hand. I fixed it and wore it still. One time, coming out rather fast across the small street to where I was parked, I got in my car. I didn't notice I had dropped anything, and I drove a couple blocks. Oh no, where was my belly pack and my phone? They were gone. It was just a few blocks to drive home, and I got home and I ran in and I told my spouse, and he said right away, we have to call your phone. Why, I hadn't even thought of that, but of course he had a phone. And I hear him saying, Herbie. Oh, Herbie, okay. So you're wearing cutoffs over red sweatpants, and maybe I heard red sneakers. Oh, well, I'm yelling from the side, oh, my name is Mindy. I drive a white Toyota pickup, and I'm very short. And my husband is shooing me out the door. So I barrel out and drive the 5 minutes to the library, and I'm looking for Herbie with possibly red sneakers. And I go slowly up the alley. And on one side was a wide expanse of park where a lot of unhoused people live. And on the other side is a small expanse where people barbecue. And I was looking there and looking carefully at people's costumes, and I didn't see anyone who looked like Herbie should look. And then a young man came by, and I asked, oh, do you know Herbie? And he rolled off my car. I looked down the park and I saw a woman with a cheery gait coming. And I parked and I ran out and I said, "Do you know Herbie?" "Yes, he's over there." I looked down the park. There was a man with red sneakers and he was at a picnic table. So Herbie, it's me, Mindy. And he got up and he met me halfway and we sat down on a stone bench. We were sort of knee to knee and we breathed together and we started commiserating about life with its joys and its vicissitudes. And he let me know he had also lost a cell phone before, but he had mine. After we talked philosophically for a while, and I recognized him, his wild hair echoed his wild eyes. I'd seen him several times. For the puppeteers had events monthly, and after our schmooze with food, we would pass the food through the patio. I had seen him. Well, I had grabbed a bill. I normally don't carry too much money, and I pressed it into Herbie's hand. He didn't look. He received the bill, though. And I said to him, "Herbie, you're my angel." And Herbie replied, "Well, everybody needs an angel sometime." When he looked at the bill, his mouth opened into a really wide grin, and he pocketed the bill. We said our goodbyes. It was several months before I saw Herbie again, and this time he was sitting near the parked cars in the little median, and all of his friends were with him, and he was crouched down, and they were all lighting up. And I threaded my way through the small group of people, and I touched him on the shoulder, and we exchanged glances. I handed him another bill. Everyone needs an angel sometime. My angel, Herbie. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much, Mindy. I can see why you wanted and needed to stand up to tell that story. You were so, you made me feel like I was there with you and
Thank
that
you.
you were there. I love that kind of storytelling. Thank you.
And I didn't get a chance to say how much I loved hearing your version of Orion, Artemis being my favorite goddess almost. Yes. So
Wow.
we are so thrilled to have this lovely, warm, attentive audience. Yeah.
Yeah, we really want to thank you all. This is for taking the time to come and listen to stories and share storytelling with us today because it's such a busy time of year and it means a lot. And it was truly a celebration. Maybe we can, what shall we do now? You tell me.
See, well, it's 5:14 and people had come in at 4, which was lovely. How about if some people want to stay and chat, we could have a little schmooze. I like that word. We could have a little schmooze, and the other people, we wish them marvelous holidays, safe and warm, and we're so glad that you came, truly. So those who want to stay for a little bit, why don't we just open up and to gallery view.
Yes, that's something we can each choose gallery view. And so when we're in gallery view, at least on my device, I can see all of us actually. Maybe you can't on yours, but I can see if I can try and spotlight all of the storytellers for everyone so that everybody can like give an extra woohoo for everyone. I'm going to try and do that. Let's see. That's going to be fun. And then as soon as we've done that, I will end the recording and just have time, as Mindy said, to schmooze. Okay, am I missing? Who am I missing? Are we Lance? Do I have you, Lance? No. Okay. I think that's all of us. Is it? Yay! Thank you, everybody. Woo-hoo. I invite everybody, unmute yourself. And if you're still here with us, if you can turn your camera on so that we can really appreciate each other's beautiful faces and wonderful recognition. And thank you to all the tellers.
Thank you, everybody. Fabulous. Thank you so much.
And thank you, Sarah, for being the bestest president ever of SAC and ASSIST and everything else, and just supporting this effort. We appreciate it so much, because otherwise Northern Californians and Southern Californians near the twain do meet, really, except once in a blue moon.
Well, you all did a great job. You all did a great job. It was you guys.
And it's such a blessing to join together with people that we don't always get to tell us. So thank you to everybody.
Very fun.
It is a blessing.